Good evening. Welcome to the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF Marine and on Twitter at DrewDotsonNFL. With me is my co-host, Scott. You can find Scott on Reddit at Stewie35. And for the second time tonight, we are joining you live. After some technical difficulties, we're hoping to get it right this time. But it's okay, because it's just the two of us tonight, so we're not trying to triangulate it between the three of us. Tyler is away at his geriatric concert, checking out some Stevie Wonder. How are you doing tonight, Scott?
Doing wonderful. I'm ready to get this done for the second time in a row. You know, that last one didn't get very far in, but it was a fun one. The ride was wonderful. Let me tell you, it's about the experience, guys. It's about the experience.
Yeah, the experience of sitting on the camera alone by yourself while my internet cut out for 5 minutes. Write in your diary about it later, huh?
It'll be in my journal. It's not a diary, okay? Gosh.
If it has a lock on it, it's a diary.
Hey, man, it was to keep you out.
Didn't work, did it? All right. Let's start with our week in review again. And let's start with tight end. Big money tight end. $20 million guaranteed. Third highest guaranteed money for a tight end ever for Charles Clay to Buffalo. Scott, why don't you tell everybody what you feel about Charles Clay and his huge contract?
I just don't think you're going to get all that money back into his play. I think he's a good decent tight end. He's a good NFL tight end. He can block, he can do that kind of stuff. But as far as fantasy goes, I mean, he's not the guy you're looking for at all. I don't think this is a good move either fantasy-wise for him. Buffalo, I feel like they're doing kind of like what Philadelphia did about 5 years ago now, where they signed a bunch of free agents that they thought were just going to turn the team around real quick and revitalize that team, and it didn't go so hot. So I'm kind of seeing a 2.0 here in Buffalo. Feel bad for Watkins. Hopefully they can get a quarterback there that can develop, not just some old dude.
Yeah, I'm really not that interested in a tight end that's playing for a Rex Ryan head coach team with some Greg Roman offensive coordinator sprinkled on, mixed in with a little EJ Manuel Matt Castle QB Sunday. None of that seems like a recipe for tight end fantasy success, so I'm going to be passing on Charles Clay everywhere. Whatever someone's going to want to acquire him is going to be too much for me. So I think that's pretty much nails it. Let's move on to another big name signing in Buffalo, Percy Harvin, part of the dream team.
This was exactly my point. I think he could be okay. I think that they need to try and focus on getting him back to what he was good at back in the days of even Green Bay when he was running the slots. I think that would be really good for him, But I don't know if they have the coaches out there to get out there and do it for him. I don't know if they're going to use them the right way. They definitely don't have a quarterback to use them the right way. I mean, I don't trust either of their quarterbacks either. So, I mean, it's definitely a downgrade for Percy Harvin if you had him as any sort of weapon or thought of a weapon. I personally was never sold on him ever since he left Minnesota, but, things happen. So, I think, that's basically all on Harvin. What do you think, Drew?
I think his outlook's a little bit better than Charles Clay, but I still think we're looking at probably about an 800-yard season upside, maybe with a little bit of rushing upside or rushing potential sprinkled in, but overall, unless you're starting 4 or 5 wide receivers and he's at the bottom of that list, this isn't really big news. I feel like it's a pretty significant downgrade for him. Honestly, the only name in Buffalo I'm interested in at all is Sammy Watkins and LaShawn McCoy. Other than that, I'm going to pass. I used to like Robert Woods, but clearly the new regime in there is not interested in him, which doesn't make me happy. I thought he was a pretty solid possession receiver. He's seemed pretty consistent, but apparently they disagree. So those would have been the only guys I was interested in. So I feel like we can move on from that because it just doesn't seem like there's a bunch of fantasy value there.
Well, Buffalo's just kind of a no-go zone for us. I don't like it there either. I agree. I think Watkins is my number one in Buffalo, and then quick number two would be McCoy, and I'm pretty much not taking anybody else.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it would take. I mean, even if they brought a QB in, I'd still be pretty pessimistic about a Greg Roman Rex Ryan offense. I mean,
what rookie pick would you value Percy Harvin at? Would you need a rookie pick to get him off your hands? Like, would you give a fourth or a third for him, or to give him up if you already had him? Say you had him 2 years ago and you just haven't been able to get rid of him, which I think you should have by now. But say you still held on to him, what would you recommend people try and get for him?
If I've got Harvin, I'm not moving him for anything. If I can't get a late second for him, I'm not moving him. Depending on my wide receiver depth, I'd still be hesitant on a late second. If I could see him starting for me some weeks, bye weeks, injuries, whatever, mid-second, which might be high. I don't know. But I think Harvin's, the fact that he followed Rex Ryan to Buffalo gives me a little bit of hope for him. So I'm not so quick to write him off, even though I'm not too sold on that offense being that high powered.
Yeah, I think that covers it pretty well.
Yeah, now let's hit on another New York free agent signing, and this is one we actually completely forgot to hit on last week, and that's Shane Vereen signing with the New York Giants. Now, I don't know how you feel about Shane Vereen, but I'm personally a big fan of him. I did quite a few startups last year. I took him as my RB1 in a couple of them just because, I thought he reminds me a lot of Gio, actually. I like him a lot. I think this is a real good landing spot for him because Andre Williams is essentially garbage, and Rashawn Jennings isn't bad, but I feel like they're just going to run him till the wheels fall off, and the lug nuts are pretty loose as it is. He's 30 years old. He started kind of degrading towards the end of the season, and I think Shane Vereen's going to come in there with some fresh legs from his time in New England and introduce a little bit of explosiveness to that New England backfield.
Yeah, no, I really think that'll do something good for the Giants and good for Shane Vereen himself. I think that this is definitely going to help the Giants as far as actual NFL football goes, and Vereen, I think, gets a bump from this. In New England, you never know who's going to get the rock each week. That's just how Bill Belichick is. It helps them from a team standpoint, but it's terrible from fantasy. So anytime you leave the New England backfield, although that's ideal situation when they're handing you the rock, it's going to be a bit of an upgrade. I think this was a good landing spot for him here for the Giants. I think that you're going to see some pretty good numbers from him. Basically, I really like his pass catching ability. He obviously runs pretty well too. I don't really see the Gio comparison, but I think he's definitely a good back, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with the Giants. If he's, I'm putting out some feelers probably for him right now just to see what people are valuing him out, see if anyone's sleeping on him a little bit, and maybe snatch him up.
Yeah, and I don't mean the Gio comparison wasn't meant to be a side-by-side comparison, more in terms of their play style.
Okay, I can see that, definitely.
And I think we're going to hit on our last free agent signing, which I'm just a little bit excited about, and it's another running back who's going to do quite a bit in the passing game. That's C.J. Spiller signing in New Orleans. I want to get your take on this first before I get to hit on it.
So, I mean, with Mark Ingram gone, I think this is a really good sign for the Saints.
I'm going to stop you right there. Mark Ingram re-signed.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I did not know that. All right. So since Mark Ingram's there, I'm kind of surprised about this signing then. I think it'll be good for the Saints. I'm not sure how good Spiller's going to be doing as far as fantasy value goes. He is injured a lot all the time, so I don't know that he has much fantasy value anymore. I know some people still take him high. I've never been a huge Spiller fan, but I think he's a good back. He's got a lot of talent. Being in New Orleans will probably help him out. So I think it helps Spiller, but not as far as fantasy value, I think. I think that actually takes a little bit of a dip.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you there because I think a lot of Spiller's, he's not necessarily injury prone, but his injury potential came from them trying to use him in Buffalo as kind of a bruiser and trying to, disguise his usage and running him up the middle. And I think Sean Payton showed was Darren Sproles that he doesn't care. He'll just split him out wide and use him in the screen game and, screw this guy, isn't it? If they're good enough, it doesn't matter if you know what's coming. They'll get yards anyways. I think we're looking at Sproles numbers plus with Spiller. He is 28. He has had some injury concerns. I don't know that I'm going to weigh that too heavy against him. I like the signing. They actually gave him more guaranteed money than they gave Mark Ingram, which to me says they're going to find a way to put him in the game a significant amount. The Jimmy Graham signing, the Jimmy Graham trade for Unger, defensive lineman, shows they're going to do some work with the running backs. I think he's got some significant fantasy upside.
But if we're saying that they're going to do a lot with the running backs, but we also have said that they're not going to be using Spiller as more of a pounded back. So do you see them using Spiller? Okay, sorry, I got confused there for a second. I had Shane Vereen written on my screen there. But so you're saying Mark Ingram's going to get a lot of those carries. How much is Spiller going to get, or maybe do you think Mark Ingram takes a dip from this because they're going to be splitting carries more now?
I think they can coexist. I just don't know how well. I think Spiller can exist just fine with Ingram, and I think it depends on how much we. I couldn't just put words together for some reason. It depends on how much we decide to invest in the run game. If we actually do it for once, instead of just saying we're going to do it and give him enough carries, it doesn't matter if we're using Spill as well. I think Ingram will be a productive fantasy back.
Okay. I personally don't see enough room in the backfield for him to get enough numbers, like what you're saying. But I'd be interested to see it.
The only reason I think that is just there's just so few options to get fantasy numbers outside of the backfield now that Graham and Stills are gone and Colston continues to decline. It's going to be Cooks, it's going to be Toon and Hill are going to get some kind of numbers, but not enough to compensate. So Spiller's going to be picking up numbers there, some of that numbers, which means there's still going to be rushing numbers left over for Ingram and Pierre Thomas numbers left over. I don't know how exactly it's going to split. Somebody, one of them could take a hit, or Ingram could take a huge jump, and Spiller could see almost no rushing work and see a complete.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I swear.
My brain is so fried this weekend. I had to teach myself a half a book of statistics, and I've got nothing left. But a complete absence of use in the rushing game for Spiller. Just like Sproles. Sproles was almost never used in the running game. His use was almost exclusively in the passing game.
Yeah, I mean, he lined up in the backfield sometimes, but he rarely took a handoff. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think we could see that. And I mean, if you combine the running backs' rushing yards from when we had Sproles, you could make a pretty decent running back. But the problem was we were always splitting carries.
So you can play up to 3 running backs in your league. Should you just roster all 3 Saints and just use that? Like if you have like one really good RB1.
Well, no, I'm saying because we used to have to split it between Pierre Thomas and Mark Ingram.
And then Sproles.
Now that we're leaning on Mark Ingram as our running back, he should be able to get enough carries on his own to be a starting running back.
Well, now, yeah.
And then Spiller will get to work in the passing game.
Okay.
I'm sure everybody listening stopped listening like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, like, I don't care about this anymore.
But let's... Oh, it's okay, because we actually just gained a viewer.
There we go. That's always good news.
So they knew that they could stop listening when I was done talking about the Saints. But let's go ahead and move into our college player discussion for the week, and let's move into a guy I've been looking into a decent amount fairly recently, and that's Devontae Parker. And I want to hear your initial reactions on him.
All right. So, I mean, watching Devontae Parker, the first thing I noticed was the lack of his ability to cut very sharply. Routes, even a slant or anything like that, I felt was really, I mean, not necessarily rounded off. It didn't look sharp. It didn't look clean. It didn't look quick. He wasn't bursting out of it. It just wasn't that impressive. That was the first thing I noticed. He does have great after the catch ability. He has a huge radius. I mean, everyone knows about his numbers. I don't know exactly what his arm spans are and all that kind of good stuff. But I mean, he's got great combine numbers and all that kind of good stuff. But the tape just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was expecting a little bit more. He did do a good job of running through arm tackles. I mean, that stuff was good. I mean, you could see he ran hard when he did get the ball. But there was a couple plays I even saw him, it was like a fade route or just a streak. And he seemed to let off because he didn't think the ball was coming to him or something. So, I mean, there's plays like that all across there. There's plays where he just lost his concentration and seemed to drop a ball that he should have had. I mean, it was behind him or low or really high or something like that. But, any pass, you get 2 hands on it, especially if you're trying to be an NFL receiver, you got to catch it. You absolutely have to catch it. So, I mean, those few things have kind of turned me off. He's definitely going to be dropping to the lower part of my first round. I do think he's a first-round pick still. I think that he's got a lot of great abilities, and as long as he's coachable, I don't know the guy. I don't know his personality. I don't know what people are saying about that as far as that goes. But if he's coachable, if he's willing to learn, then I think he can really improve and become a weapon. But right now, I don't think he's a complete receiver at all yet. What do you think, Drew?
I agree and I disagree. I agree that he's an incomplete receiver, but I don't agree on what his issues are. His cuts are inconsistent. Like, you see him round off some routes to the point where it's noticeable to even your everyday NFL watcher, but other plays you watch him and he could turn on a dime. You watch some of these comeback routes and he's going full speed and turns around just like that. I want to start on the positives on him because I've really made an effort to go through and try and see what's why he's looked at as a potential top 10, top 15 NFL draft pick, and why people want him in their top 4, top 5 rookie draft picks. I can kind of see it. When he gets separation down the field, he tracks the ball as good as just about anybody. He's improved at catching the ball in stride. He did have issues in 2012, so I guess he would have been a sophomore, probably red shirt. No, he didn't red shirt, so no, he would have been a sophomore. My biggest issue with him is when defenders are playing him close, when they're on top of him, he doesn't play aggressively enough. If it's a contested ball, 9 times out of 10, he's not coming away with it. He lets them deflect the pass, intercept the pass. He doesn't body out. He doesn't box these wide receivers or these cornerbacks out. And that's only going to become more frequent of an occurrence in the NFL, that tight coverage. He's not going to be able to get separation on NFL cornerbacks like he can in college. And that's my major concern. If he can, improve his route running, which is a little suspect, and start gaining separation, then he's as good as anybody out there. But it's when those cornerbacks are on top of him is when I think his flaws start to really show, and when I start looking at him as a guy I almost want to drop out of my first round rookie tier altogether. I actually, I've been going through his tape, pass by pass, trying to make notes on it, and I haven't finished it yet, but I'm trying to find the positives on this guy, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I'm at this point right now that I can't invest in a guy that I don't believe in, and I believe that this is an issue that's going to follow him to the NFL. Do you have anything else you want to touch on with Parker before we move on?
No, I think you hit it pretty well. I can see the things you said, and I think that we did that good though. I think we covered it completely.
All right, let's move on to our later round prospect, and that's Javorius Allen. I guess that's how you say that, or more commonly known as Buck Allen, who will be 24 at the start of the 2015 season. So that's already a little bit of an eh. All right, I'm gonna.
This is the guy. This is the guy right here, loving C.J. Spiller, the 28-year-old running back. Oh man, I love it.
Yeah, this guy's gonna be 24, having never taken a snap, which means he's still. By the time he gets his first contract, he'll be 28. He'll be C.J. Spiller's age.
You're right. Maybe he'll join the Saints.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna make it to his second contract.
Well, let's hear what you have to say about him then, huh?
I'm just gonna flat out say it. He sucks. This guy is horrible. I did not see one run that went for more than 2 yards where he did not have a giant gaping hole right smack dab in front of him. I watched him run headfirst into multiple defenders, and you can just hear the smack noise right on the tape. He just ran right headfirst into him. Guy has no vision at all. He couldn't find a hole to his. He makes Trent Richardson look like he has vision. It's horrible. His only redeeming quality is he works pretty well as a third down back. If you involve him in the passing game, especially in the screen game, he can contribute pretty well there. In terms of open field vision, if he's not getting blocks, he's not going to produce a whole lot. But he can catch the ball pretty well, so I'll give him that. But all in all, he's going on the do not draft board. Hope he gets drafted somewhere that kind of looks like it might be an appetizing situation. Someone will draft him in front of me and let someone I like fall to me. So I'll let you say what you think, and hopefully you can redeem him a little bit, and hopefully,
I didn't think he looked terrible. I don't think he's a top 2 round pick. Definitely not. I mean, I guess late third, I could see someone taking him. I'm not really a big fan of him either. Seemed like he was good when he had the blocks. That's pretty much what Drew got at as well. If he had good blocking, he could run through the hole. That made sense. I mean, that's if you're going to be a running back, you should better be able to do that. But as far as, I mean, anytime the hole was even just small, it seemed like instead of keeping his head up and working his way through something, he would just kind of literally put his head down, not look at anything, and just run into where he thought the hole was going to maybe open up, whether that was his lineman or somebody else or whatever. He just was like, yeah, right here, we're doing it. Let's go. So, I mean, that's quite the issue, I think. That's part of what Drew was saying, and I can see that. But, I mean, I wouldn't say you can't draft him at all, but he's definitely going to be a low-round draft pick for me. One of those guys where at the end of the fourth or end of the third, if you didn't do enough, scouting and you don't see anybody you know or anybody you like at all, then maybe you take a shot at this guy. I don't think he has what it takes to play in the NFL, really. I'm not sure if he's getting any draft hype or if people are talking about drafting him. But, yeah, unfortunately, I agree with Drew on this one. I don't think he's very good. I think I'm less harsh on him. I would draft him if it was very late and I didn't know anybody else's names.
Well, I am saying you can't draft Buck Allen because the thing is, even if there's an open hole and it's a big open hole, if it's not in front of him, he's not going to run into it. That's the problem. If he can't run.
Yeah, he's going to where the designed hole is supposed to be. The designed hole. If it's like, hey, you're going to the 8. All right, I'm going to the 8. The hole opened up at 4, but you said to go to the 8. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, if he can't close his eyes at the start of the run and go where it's supposed to go, he's not gonna get it. Essentially, I could have, besides the open field stuff, I could have gotten as many yards as he got there in the designed runs. That might be a little bit of a hyperbole, but
the point is proven.
That's how bad he is, in my opinion. So take that with what you will. So let's move on from my hate fest and move on to our submitted question for the week, and we're gonna go with Bacon Bucks because he doesn't know how to say his own name, and he wants to know about Jordan Matthews and Moncrief's values after the moves. He's got a second part to this question, but let's hit on this first part. Jordan Matthews, Dante Moncrief after their moves. One goes up, one goes down. How much did Jordan Matthews move up for you after Macklin left town?
I mean, I think that it's a significant jump. He goes from 3 to 2, I believe. Is that correct, right? 3 to 2, or did he go from 2 to 1?
2.
Wide receiver 2 to 1? Or he's 3 to 2, right? He's number 2 now.
He's the number 1 in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay, so he is number 1 in Philadelphia. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big jump. I think he was already going to get a lot of targets, even if Macklin didn't go anywhere, just because, I mean, you're already number 2. I think he's much more talented than Macklin is. I'm not someone that dislikes Macklin very much, to be honest with you guys, but I think that because Macklin's gone, I think that opens a lot more for Matthews. I think that's I think that he's going to be doing well again this season. I think he's the type of receiver you want out on the edge. He's the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 prototype guy that you want. It just shows Chip Kelly's faith in this guy, which if an NFL scout or NFL coach and whole team or system can believe in a guy that much, I mean, that's usually good signs, especially when he's only a rookie. I don't think he's going to have the big sophomore slump everybody usually has. I'm buying this guy no matter what kind of league I'm in, redraft or dynasty. I definitely think it's a good jump for him. I think it won't seem that big in numbers, but it will definitely, after another 2 years, I think he'll be if he's not already, a top-tier tight end, or top-tier wide receiver.
All right. Quick question. Kind of assess your value point on him. At this point, would you take the 103 or Jordan Matthews?
103 overall. Is that what you're saying?
No,
That
103 in this year's draft.
rookie
Gurley,
draft pick?
Cooper, Kevin White.
I think I'm going to go ahead and take Jordan Matthews at this point. Wide receiver one, offense that likes to run a lot of plays. I'm taking Matthews.
All right, kind of about the same point. I think he sits right between the 102 and 103 for me. He could probably he might actually jump over the 102. I haven't spent a ton of time on thinking of where Jordan Matthews moves for me, but he definitely moves up. I like Matthews a lot
Fully agree.
during the pre-draft process, and despite me either loving what Chip Kelly does or having no faith at all in it, I'm still buying Matthews. It's either going to turn out really, really good or shit is going to burn down. Either way, I think Matthews is either going to have value in Philadelphia or he's going to have to go somewhere else and find some value. But I think that Chip Kelly's system is going to produce some numbers for him. Unless he decides to promote Josh Huff over him, like the rumors say, and if he does, then I'm just going to ship Chip Kelly a box of my poo because the shit's retarded. But in all honesty, you can't not like Jordan Matthews as the number one in that system. Look at what Jeremy Maclin did there, and I think Jordan Matthews is a far superior prospect. I think he's only going to continue to develop. Let's move on to Dante Moncrief, who, instead of having somebody clear out in front of him, he had somebody move in front of him. Andre Johnson, future Hall of Fame wide receiver, moves in front of him as the wide receiver too. What does this do for Moncrief's value for now and for the future? What do you think?
I really don't see. I mean, yeah, it definitely hurts his value a little bit this season. Lining up as the number two, he's going to be way better than lining up as the number three or the slot, whatever they end up playing him as with T.Y. Hilton. I think Hilton will run more slot, and Moncrief will still get on the outside, and he'll be able to do his same work that he was doing last season. But I do consider it a slight hit in the immediate. He's going down a little bit just because, he's probably not going to get as many snaps. If they run two wide receiver sets, it's most likely not going to be him, all that kind of stuff. So because of that, I give him a little downgrade. But really, in the long term, learning from a wide receiver like Andre Johnson, I mean, Reggie Wayne, I'm sure, has already taught him a good amount of stuff. And to continue learning from another great wide receiver that's been in the NFL for a long time. So, these aren't just guys that had 3 great years or something, and then fall off the map. These are guys that know how to run a sustained career. I think it's a great thing. It's just like any quarterback behind a Hall of Famer, everybody behind Tom Brady, everybody behind Brett Favre, everyone behind Peyton Manning, all these guys. When you have a great showing you at least a little bit, even if they're not showing you, you just pay attention. It's gonna help that person out, in their future when they actually end up having it to be in any sort of situation like that. So short term. Yeah, it's going to be a slight downgrade. I don't think it's going to be huge. I think they continue to use T.Y. in the slot, and Moncrief will get a decent amount of snaps out there. They got luck. They like to throw. Makes sense. But long term, I think it's a big upgrade again for him.
Yeah, I think we're same spot. I think numbers-wise, he's going to look at a little bit of an upgrade from what his numbers were last year, but overall, I think it's probably a decline from what you were hoping for this year. Overall, long term, I don't think this does anything. I think he's gonna continue to improve. Having Andre Johnson as a mentor is nothing to shake a stick at. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame wide receiver right there, teaching you how to do your job. So, I mean, especially considering Moncrief's probably going to be Andrew Luck's possession receiver, Andre Johnson's a hell of a possession receiver to model your game after. So, I'm all about it. I'm fine with waiting another year for Moncrief or another 2 years, depending on how long Andre Johnson stays really relevant. So we'll move on to the second part of his question, which is, if the Cowboys take Gordon or Gurley, does whichever one become the top running back in this class? I almost view it as a tiebreaker. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty close to the same way. I personally think Gurley is the better back, and I try to take people based on talent rather than situation. Situations changes. I mean, this season is a perfect example of how situations can change, or this offseason is, about how many crazy trades that we didn't think would happen have been going on. So as far as that goes, I'm gonna try and take Gurley regardless. But if I mean the Cowboys is gonna have, I believe, a better chance in the start because I mean they have a great offensive line. They're looking to run the ball. They're getting fat in a little bit, but I think if anything, you're just sitting behind him until he gets hurt in week 2. So I mean, I would almost agree with him here that he's it's basically a tiebreaker as far as immediate value. If I'm on a team that needs to win now and I've somehow acquired an early pick in the draft, then yeah, I'm probably going with the one that goes for the Cow. If the Cowboys take one, I'll probably go with him. But that being said, I also don't really think the Cowboys will take one of the two. I think they'll wait until the later rounds to try and get a running back that they think has good value. But you got to go on talent. Don't go on situation. Situation change very rapidly. Go on talent. Pick the player that you think is the better player. What do you think, Drew?
Talent over situation. All day, every day. Unless that situation is just he's getting buried behind an established starter, and Gordon. And I'm of course talking about Gurley. I think Gurley is clearly the superior talent. And Gurley's getting buried behind Le'Veon Bell, and Gordon gets to go to let's say San Diego or Dallas. Even then, I'd be hesitant, but because that to me would almost say that something's happening with Le'Veon. But I'm going with talent over situation, like you said. Situations too fluid. Stuff changes way too quickly in the NFL. I'm not as certain as you are that Dallas won't go running back in the first, though. If pass rushers all dried up by the time they pick, I could easily see running back being best player available for them. And, I mean, yeah, with that line, they could have just about anybody and them still put up. But imagine somebody like Todd Gurley behind a line like that. Sickening. But I think we hit on that pretty thoroughly. Let's move on to a question for GI. Does the addition of Andre Johnson in Indianapolis raise or lower the short-term value of Colts wide receivers T.Y. Hilton and Dante Moncrief? And we've already hit on Dante Moncrief, so let's hit on T.Y. Hilton real quick.
I think this helps T.Y. if anything, because he's still going to get all the snaps. I still think that he's going to be out on the field plenty. The coaching regime is obviously really good with him and likes him a lot. So I think doesn't hurt him. It just helps him having a more established wide receiver that they know is able to do all these things versus Dante Moncrief, who I believe can do all of those things, but he's not an established guy yet. I think that it just raises him up, brings a little bit more coverage away from T.Y. and towards Andre. And if they don't do that, Andre's going to get off until they do it. So, if anything, I think it's a good raise for Ty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see where his numbers don't have all that much more room to go up when he's running for 1,300 yards in this season. But I have to agree. I mean, it can't hurt him. I mean, I can't see him doing worse than Reggie Wayne did last year, and I mean, we could easily see Hilton's numbers continue to go up, which would just blow my tiny little mind. His second part of his question is, how much increase in ADP do you see Cecil Shorts climbing over the next week now that he's the wide receiver 2 in Houston? His current ADP via DLF, the ADP compiled by Ryan McDowell, is 213.83. So how much do you think his ADP could climb?
Oh, man. Personally, to be honest, I'm just not a Cecil Shorts fan. I don't think that he's a wide receiver 2 type. I don't think he's an edge guy. I don't think he's anything that I personally, in an ideal situation, a wide receiver 2 would not be Cecil Shorts for me. I think he's a better fit in the slot, so I don't see this being a huge jump for him in Houston. They're still trying to figure out that whole situation at quarterback there. Under 200, 199.99. That's what I see it maybe climbing to. What do you got, Drew?
I think we're looking at probably closer to probably 150, something like that, 160, just because he has a home now. I think a lot of the decrease in his ADP was due to the fact that people didn't see him sticking in Jacksonville and nobody knew where he was going to go. People were, me included, thought, he might end up being a wide receiver 3 or 4 somewhere, getting paid, peanuts. But the fact that he's going to go be the wide receiver 2 in Houston with DeAndre Hopkins drawing coverage on the other side, he's not going to be a stud, but he's going to be usable. I'm not running out and buying him, but this isn't a bad signing. I especially like it for Hopkins, but I like it for Shorts too. But
you picking him up off the waiver wire if he's out there in some sort of very shallow league that you might be in?
Absolutely, but any league I'm in, he's definitely not on the waiver wire. I already had him. But I like Shorts in Jacksonville. I had Shorts before they drafted Allen Robinson, so it is what it is. So let's move on to the next question from our buddy iRavage, who wasn't a smart man when he wrote this. If you could talk about your this was directed personally to me. If you could talk about your David Carr wet dreams and how stats can be misconstrued to fit a narrative. Well, first let's talk about how names can be misconstrued. David Carr was a quarterback. He started for the Houston Texans a long time ago. I'm going to go ahead and assume we're talking about Derek Carr, quarterback that starts for the Raiders, that I happen to be quite high on, and literally everyone else I talk to on Twitter is not. So I've been fighting the good fight for the last 2 weeks, trying to stick up for Derek Carr all by myself. He brings this up because people use the idea that, Derek Carr had a very low yards per attempt on his way to throwing for 3,200 yards as a rookie. He also threw for 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. And, the idea is that low yards per attempt is not normally a indicator of future success for quarterbacks. Unfortunately, most young quarterbacks don't have the hot garbage wide receiver core that was given to Derek Carr to deal with in Oakland. Outside of Andre Holmes, you had James Jones, Rod Streeter, Schmucky the Clown. And, go ahead and name some more, because these guys wouldn't be 3 or 4s on other teams, but these guys are supposed to be his 1 and 2s. So the fact that they were even making it 7 yards out and getting completion is pretty impressive. So I'm going to go ahead and reserve judgment until he's got some able-bodied wide receivers to pass to. He also didn't have a consistent run game until Latavius Murray went in, and he got, all of 4 games with him. So I haven't gotten one legitimate argument against Derek Carr besides that one simple yards per attempt stat. And that is what half the people I've talked to have used that entire stat to form that narrative. That is where that question comes from. And my wet dreams involve him throwing for 4,200 yards, 38 touchdowns to Kevin White, on my birthday. It's perfect. But in all seriousness, I just don't understand how you can, you can hate on David. I'm reading the stupid script now. He's got me screwing up. Thanks.
Sure.
Derek Carr.
Your co-host names, man. Am I Dave? Is that what I am today?
No, I was reading David Carr. I was about to call him David Carr. I wasn't going to call you Dave.
Yeah. But you often do call somebody Dave.
Yeah, I do that. I'm going to call you Dave just for thinking I was going to call you Dave. I'll show you. But no, I mean, people are ranking Teddy Bridgewater top 7 and 8 quarterbacks, but Derek Carr isn't even in their top 15.
That's a little insane to me.
Just a little bit. But I think I've ranted about Mr. Carr for just a bit too long. Let's move on to Slimbo 737's question. And Tim wants to know, it's kind of an open-ended question, so take it wherever you want to. How do you reconcile the two distinct schools of evaluation when it comes to your own process of scouting players, specifically rookies? Meaning, do you lean more towards using a metrics/an analytics-based approach, tape-based/classic scouting approach, or a composite of the two?
I mean, I think we've already touched on this in some other episodes, but there's nothing wrong with that. I'm personally a guy that tries to rely on the tape and the scouting. I think that that really tells you how a player is going to play. It's much more legit of what you're getting from that player, because I think the intangibles is what you can't teach. You can teach a guy if he doesn't bench press enough. You can teach a guy to lift more weights. You can push him to lift more weights, to lift heavier. You can't go out and teach a guy football smarts. You can try, but there's no guarantee that any person, no matter how hard you try to teach them about football or reacting or anything else, there's no way to definitively improve that, to improve just the natural feel for the game that players have that make them go from someone that's really good to the great player. So I try and stay on that end of the tape, but sometimes the numbers do get you. That's why Drew is so high on Devontae Parker right now. I mean, he just loves his numbers, and he thinks he's top 2, top 1 even maybe. So, you really got to take those numbers into consideration. But I think it's mostly based on tape.
I'm right there with you, bud. But I'm not so much on the analytics, but there are metric sides of it that I'm interested in. Less so on combine stats like the 40, stuff like that, but more in terms of height, weight, hand size, things like that. I'm in that camp that believes if you're too skinny, you're going to get lit up in the NFL. You're not going to be able to last. It's I don't take it to the extreme where I think you absolutely have to hit a certain weight, but it's something I pay attention to. It's something that it's a check in the box for me, I guess. But for the most part, it comes from tape. For the most, if I have somebody that whose opinion I respect, and they come out with a metrics-based and analytics-based approach, and their numbers indicate this guy's worth taking a look at, I'll absolutely break out the tape on him and see what's the deal with this guy. But I'm not going to go draft a guy blind just because the metrics say he's good.
Totally agree. I think we're both in the same spot on that one. I think we got that question pretty good. This one's a much shorter question and very easy to answer, at least for me. This one comes from Reggie F. Is Andrew Luck ever worth first overall in .5 PPR? What do you got, Drew? I think this one's a pretty short and easy.
No. I love Luck. I think he's far and above the number one overall quarterback for Dynasty, but I wouldn't even justify taking him in the first round of a startup draft, much less the number one overall. I think quarterback's too deep. Quarterbacks last too long as it is for Luck to be my number one overall. I could take Phillip Rivers in the 13th, 12th. I would rather have Phillip Rivers and whoever I get at first overall rather than Andrew Luck and whatever wide receiver I'm getting in the 14th round.
Yeah. I'm saying yes if you're playing a 2 QB league, but if you're just saying, a standard league, the only thing we're doing different is it's point 0.5 points per reception. There's no reason to draft Andrew Luck first overall. It's just so deep. There's usually at least 20 quarterbacks every season that are producing at a pretty good level, if not closer to 25 to 30 even. They're producing at a startable level. Not great. You're not getting Andrew Luck style numbers from all those guys, obviously. But, I mean, if you have two better wide receivers instead over having that Andrew Luck one quarterback, you can only start in one. Most leagues have at least two of all the other positions, so you're filling up on a position that may have a few more people, but you're not going to get that top-end talent in the 12th or 14th or somewhere around there that you could get with Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers is much closer to Andrew Luck than, say, you're going to get in the 12th. I can't even think of a wide receiver you get that late. Wide receiver 3 or 4 to a wide receiver 1 in NFL actual standards. So you can't take Andrew Luck that early. I'm having a hard time taking Andrew Luck before the third round even. I think there's lots of other great guys that you're trying to get. Top tier of almost every position probably goes well before any quarterback goes for me.
Yeah, completely agree. I don't think there's anything more to say about it, and we can move on to Brad 27's question, which says, in a complete rebuild that will span this year and next, would you still take Cooper and White above Gurley if you own the 1-1 and the 1-2? What you got for us?
I think no. I think I'm going to go ahead and take Gurley with one of those personally because I'm thinking complete rebuild. I don't know how you got the 1-1 and 1-2. Well done. But even in my worst times on most teams, I have one wide receiver that I have already been grooming for a year or more. I think even in a complete rebuild, almost every season, every rookie draft, I'm taking a wide receiver that I'm holding on for at least 3 years. That's just a constant position that you want. I mean, if you ended up with 5 wide receiver studs, you can never be upset. And so, I mean, saying that, it seems like you'd want to take both White and Cooper, but even in a complete rebuild, it should only take you 2 years, I would say. I mean, especially starting with the 1-1 and 1-2 right here to go ahead and hit. I think Gurley is a once-in-a-generation kind of guy. I would go ahead and take Cooper or White, whichever one I was higher on personally, and then go with Gurley for the other one.
Yeah. Gurley's still my 1-1, so I'm taking Gurley, and then I'm taking, depending on the state of my wide receiver core, I'm going to take either the high upside option, which is White, or the safer option, the more guaranteed option, which I view as Cooper. I think if you're in a complete rebuild, you're going for talent, and I think Gurley is a guy that's he's a guy that's gonna contribute to your roster for his entire career if you hold him. He's gonna be an RB1. I just don't see a lot of ways where he's not. Where Cooper could be a wide receiver too. Kevin White could be a wide receiver 6 if just everything breaks wrong for him. Whereas Gurley, just besides injuries, he's probably going to be a success. Anything else you got on that?
No, I think you covered it well. I think we both feel pretty close to the same there.
All right, and I think that covers our questions for the night, and that leaves me to my rant of the week, which is going to cover a guy who we talked about just a little bit earlier, is a wide receiver named Sammy Watkins. Now, Sammy is a guy that's not getting a lot of love right now, uh, mainly because of who his offensive coordinator is, who his head coach is, who his quarterback is. But, let me remind you who Demaryius Thomas's quarterbacks were. Kyle Orton, Tim Tebow. Yeah, they weren't very good. He was still pretty good, though. Um, I'm really not big on the whole idea of writing him off. Um, I don't get it. I really don't get the idea that he didn't prove anything last year. He broke 950 yards as a rookie, which really isn't all that common at all. Like at all. Very few rookies do it, and I think that this 2014 class is really skewing people's perceptions because, yeah, a bunch of rookies this year broke 1,000 yards. You know how many before did it? Less than one a year. It averaged out to about one every 2.5 years. So the fact that Watkins did it, it's a pretty good sign for him. So I just don't understand this idea that Watkins is, he's unproven, and I don't even know where I'm going with this anymore because it gets me all worked up, gets my blood pressure up. Shenanigans gets my blood pressure up. Watkins is going to be a wide receiver 1. He was taken with the 101 last year for a reason. None of those reasons have changed. He's still the hyper-talented wide receiver that he used to be. None of that has changed. His situation has changed. Guess what? Situations change. If Rex Ryan turns out to be a turd, guess what? He probably won't last 2 years in Buffalo. They'll probably bring in somebody who can support Sammy Watkins. Or Sammy Watkins will leave Buffalo. And guess what? Then he'll get to go somewhere with a great QB. He'll get to choose his QB. He'll probably go somewhere that'll help him light up the numbers. So, hell, Sammy Watkins could put up great numbers this year. Greg Roman and Rex Ryan have never had a weapon like Sammy Watkins. The best wide receivers Greg Roman have ever worked with were Anquan Bolden, Michael Crabtree, the best wide receiver Rex Ryan's ever had, who Braylon Edwards. Maybe Plaxico Burress, who at the time wasn't really all that good. Hell, maybe they'll turn into... No, I was going to say they might turn into offensive gurus, but that's a little bit of a stretch. They might utilize him better than they've ever utilized a wide receiver. He might have a 1,300-yard season. We have no idea what they're capable of doing with somebody like him. So let's not just write him off like we already know what's going to happen. Because if we already knew what was going to happen, what's the point in playing fantasy football? I'm out. I'm done. That's all I got. My
well
heart's
done.
Gonna pop if I keep going.
It was well said, I think.
All right. Well, do you have any last parting shots for us this week, Scott?
No, not really. You guys just make sure you guys are valuing people correctly by, watching the tape. Don't jump to anything because of some move that seems exciting or something like that. Make sure you're doing your research, everybody. Be smart. Don't be just caught up in the excitement with somebody and buy someone for way too much money because it seemed like what everybody else was doing.
Yeah. So hopefully next week we'll be back with the full crew. Because nobody wants to hang out with just Scott and his dirty mustache.
No. I know you guys will love it. It's okay. You don't
No.
have to say it out loud. I can hear it. And he.
All right, but thank you guys for listening. This has been the Dynasty Playbook. We would love to get y'all's feedback. If you want to message us on Twitter or on Reddit, um, if not, leave us feedback on iTunes. Just let us know what you think of the show, where we can improve, what we can do better. Segments you'd like to see on the show, segments you hate that's on the show. Just let us know how we can improve, the show for you. Because in the end, this show is not for us. This show's produced as a contribution to the Dynasty community. So let us know what you think. This has been the Dynasty Playbook, Dynasty FF's dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You can find me on Reddit at EAF Marine and on Twitter at Drew Dodson NFL. And with me has been my co-host, Scott. And you can find Scott on Reddit at Stewie35, but you probably don't want to because he doesn't like talking to nobody. Y'all have a good night. Thanks for joining us.